Hi, I'm Tom. This is Lucy. This is maneki, neko. And this is Kitty Help Desk. So today, thank you, baby. So today I wanted to try something a little bit different and talk about sort of cats in our culture. Specifically today, I wanted to talk about this cat. This is the maneki neko, which in Japanese means beckoning cat. Neko is cat. Maneki means beckoning. And beckoning, sometimes people in the West tend to interpret that to think that the cat is waving, but the cat isn't really waving. The cat is beckoning to you to come closer. So in Eastern cultures, many Eastern cultures, including Japan, to ask someone to come closer, you do this. In the West, we do this, right? But in the East, Far East, a lot of people do this. So this is what the cat is doing in this, normally sort of sitting still, but is doing this, asking you to come closer. This has expanded outside of Japan. It did start in Japan, and now you see it in a lot of Chinese establishments, especially here in the United States. You see these cats at the checkout counter at Chinese restaurants and things like that. Originally in Japan, it was a three-color cat, a Japanese bobtail cat, that this was supposed to be. That on some of them you'll see like brown patches on like the elbows and things. It's supposed to be emulating that Japanese bobtail look, but it's kind of evolved to be this white cat. If you look at this closely, you'll notice that it has this gold thing on the front. That is a coin. And in the Edo period, usually coins were worth like 1 ryo or 2 ryos. This one, if you read it, it says 10 million ryo. So this is a cat that's really gonna load you up, you know. That was actually, the coin was added after World War II, when a lot of Japanese were in really impoverished conditions. So it was just a way to sort of boost morale and get people to think that, you know, they had this in their home, that they would accumulate wealth possibly, that it would lend them luck. The whole idea of this cat kind of came about back, the earliest that I think it's been seen is it's in this woodcut from the Edo period, and you can see a vendor selling them. There are many variations of this story, but the basic premise goes something like this. There was a nobleman, perhaps a daimyo, who was traveling on the road and a big storm came up. And as this storm was growing, the daimyo went to take shelter under a tree. The tree just happened to be nearby a fairly dilapidated Shinto shrine. And as the daimyo was under the tree to get shelter from the rain, he looked over and there was a cat sitting in front of the shrine, bathing its face. And the daimyo thought that it seemed to be beckoning to him. So he decided to go over to the cat. And as he approached the shrine, lightning struck the tree. And had he been under the tree when it struck, it probably would have killed him. So the daimyo, being overjoyed that he had been saved from nearly certain death by this cat, decided that he wanted to support this shrine, and he began to make big donations to the shrine, and the shrine grew and developed, and the idea of the beckoning cat as a symbol of good luck was born. The red collar is, you know, sort of an interesting question. You know, back during the Edo period, there were portraits made of well-to-do women. And in a lot of those portraits, you'll find a little Japanese bobtail cat wearing a red collar and often having a red leash sort of trailing along behind it. And that came from the third princess from a story called The Tale of Genji. And in that story, the princess had this cat with the red leash. And that became associated with something very positive in society. And so women wanted to be associated with that. It's not unlike some social media trends today. Very similar. People tended to leash their cats back then. At that time, a cat was worth about 5 times as much as a horse. Now, you got to consider a horse is an extremely valuable animal at that time. A cat was even more valuable because they protected you They protected your health. They also protected your possessions, your food. And so people would keep them on leashes so that they weren't stolen, because people would steal other people's cats at that time because they were so valuable. And so in 1602, there was a decree that the cats should go unleashed because they weren't as effective leash as they were when they were free roaming in eliminating vermin. So there was this decree, and some people followed the decree and a lot of people didn't, because still they were afraid. They were afraid that someone would steal their cats. And so 83 years later, in 1685, the government forbid the tying up of dogs and cats. And if anyone was caught tying up their dogs and cats, they would be severely punished. So now the cats ran free. The people of the era didn't have as big a problem with plague and disease as people did in Europe. And everything worked out pretty well for the cats too, because these days cats are revered in Japan. You'll see, Japan was sort of the first place to have cat cafes where cats could be on display and people could interact with them while they had their coffee or tea or whatever. And they became a real adoption center for cats. There are some places in Japan where cats still run wild and where they do have some population problems with cats. But, that sort of attitude about letting them just procreate freely is sort of changing, and people are adopting the trap, neuter, return model there so that these cats can be a little more healthy and, not be without resources. Because at the end of the day, if you let the population cull itself, there's a lot of suffering involved in that. And no one really wants to see cats suffer in that situation. So they're working, trying to understand what they need to do in order to make that a healthy situation for everyone. But I do think around the world that Japan remains one of the best places to be if you're a cat. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.